Assigned to guard a ruthless CEO, she becomes the one weakness he never saw coming. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The night Riley Hart first walked into Vance Industries, the entire building hummed with tension. Conversations dropped when she passed, her boots echoing against polished marble floors as the security chief led her through a maze of glass hallways lit by cold white LEDs. Somewhere on the top floor, beyond bulletproof doors and biometric locks, waited the man she had been assigned to protect, Damon Vance, a ruthless CEO known for firing entire departments before breakfast and winning boardroom battles without blinking. Outside his office, Riley paused at the reflective black wall, catching a glimpse of herself. Dark tactical jacket, still smelling faintly of gun oil, hair tied back tight, jaw set like she was walking into enemy territory. Maybe she was. When the door slid open, Damon didn't bother to look at her. He stood with his back to the room, staring out over the midnight skyline, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of bourbon he hadn't touched. His voice was ice. "I don't need a babysitter." Riley didn't flinch. "Good," she said, "because I'm not here to hold your hand. I'm here to keep you alive." That earned her a single glance over his shoulder, sharp, assessing, unimpressed. He was exactly like the rumors. Tailored suit, posture carved from stone, eyes that calculated people the way most people calculated numbers. A man impossible to read, impossible to please, impossible to move. But even the coldest man in the city had a target on his back tonight. Riley reviewed the threat file in her head. 3 anonymous letters, 2 credible intel reports, and 1 message delivered directly to Damon's private penthouse elevator. Whoever wanted him dead wasn't bluffing. The security chief stepped forward to brief Damon, but Damon silenced him with a curt lift of his hand. "Fine. Stay out of my way," he said to Riley. "And don't talk." Riley almost smiled. Talking wasn't part of the assignment. For a moment, the air between them shifted, just slightly, as if her refusal to be rattled surprised him. But then his wall was back up, higher than before. He returned to his desk, dismissing her with a silence sharper than any order. Riley moved to her post, scanning exits, shadows, angles. She could feel Damon's frustration radiating like heat, but beneath it there was something else, fatigue, maybe, or the kind of vigilance that doesn't let a man sleep. And then it happened so fast she barely had time to think. A flicker on the security feed, a glint of metal from the adjacent rooftop. Riley lunged, shoving Damon down just as a suppressed shot shattered the window behind him, spraying glass across the office like shards of ice. He hit the floor with a grunt, her body covering his, her breath hot against his ear as she whispered, "Sniper, move." For the first time, Damon looked up at her with something other than indifference. Fear? Gratitude? Shock that anyone would throw themselves over him? Riley didn't wait to analyze it. She grabbed his arm, yanking him behind a steel column as a second bullet sliced through the room. Alarms erupted. Security scrambled. Damon stared at Riley like she had just broken a law of nature. Maybe she had. Because in a single heartbeat, the ruthless CEO who trusted no one had seen the one thing he could never anticipate, someone willing to take a bullet for him. Security alarms wailed through the top floor as Riley kept her body low, one hand gripping Damon's arm, pulling him behind the reinforced column while shattered glass crunched beneath their boots. For a man who supposedly feared nothing, Damon Vance looked stunned, his breath shallow, his eyes locked on the blown-out window where cold night air now surged inside like a warning. Riley pressed her fingers to her earpiece, her voice sharp and steady. "Shooter positioned on the north rooftop. Elevation looks like 12 stories up. Secure all executive floors and shut down the elevators." She scanned the skyline through the fractured opening, muscles coiled, instincts burning hot. Damon slowly pushed himself upright, brushing glass from his suit jacket, still trying to regain control of a situation that had spun far beyond any boardroom battle. "That shot was meant for me," he said quietly, as if only now accepting it. Riley gave him a look that was equal parts confirmation and irritation. That is why I am here. His jaw tightened, the ruthless so, reassembling himself piece by piece. I told you I did not need protection. Riley stepped closer, her voice a low, controlled force. And yet you would be dead if I had believed you. Something flickered in his eyes. Not gratitude. Not yet. But something cracks just slightly when a man realizes he is not invincible. The security team flooded in, weapons drawn, but Damon lifted a hand, refusing to be surrounded. He wanted answers, control, dominance over a threat too close for comfort. Find out who had access to that building, he ordered. I want names within the hour. Riley did not wait for orders. She moved through the office, analyzing the shot angle, the bullet embedded in the steel fixture, the timing. It was a precision hit from someone who knew Damon's nightly habits. Someone who knew he always stayed long after the entire building emptied. Someone close. She walked back to him. This was not random. Your schedule is too predictable. Damon's voice dropped. Then we fix that. A moment passed, tight and heavy. Damon's gaze followed her movements, studying the way she assessed threats with military precision. For a man used to being the most capable person in any room, he suddenly was not. And that unsettled him more than the bullet. We are leaving, Riley said. The rooftop is still compromised. Your penthouse has better blind spots and a private elevator. Damon raised an eyebrow. You think you can order me around in my own building? Riley did not blink. Right now, yes. Something in him should have snapped back, but instead, to his own surprise, he complied. As they moved through the executive hallway, Damon kept glancing at her, his expression unreadable, irritated, intrigued, and protective of his pride all at once. Riley stayed half a step ahead, scanning corners, checking reflections, every nerve trained on danger. She was here to guard his life. She did not expect him to start watching her, as if she had suddenly become the only unpredictable variable in his perfectly controlled world. The private elevator hummed softly as it ascended, Riley standing in front of Damon with her stance squared, her hand resting close to her holster even though the elevator was biometrically sealed. Damon watched her in the reflective steel walls, studying the way she scanned every corner as if danger itself traveled with them. When the doors opened to the penthouse level, Riley stepped out first, sweeping the hallway with crisp precision. Only when she signaled clear did Damon exit, his footsteps quieter than usual, his usual confidence touched by something he would never admit out loud. Inside the penthouse, the city lights spread beneath them like a glittering field, floor-to-ceiling windows turning the world into a silent ocean of night. Riley locked down the room, armed the silent alarms, checked structural lines, and positioned herself where she had the widest view of both entrances and windows. Damon loosened his tie, exhaling slowly, the weight of the attack settling deeper into his shoulders. He poured water into a glass, but did not drink it. Instead, he glanced at her again. You have done this before, he said. Riley replied without looking up from the security panel. More times than I can count. Military. Damon pressed. She paused. Yes. He waited for more, but she gave him nothing. Privacy was armor for her, just as money was armor for him. A moment later, she approached him, holding a small shard of metal sealed in a plastic evidence sleeve. This was the bullet. Damon took it, turning it under the light. High-grade, custom-milled. Not the kind you buy at a store. Riley nodded. Someone paid a lot for that shot. Damon's jaw worked as he absorbed that. Then we find who wrote the check. Riley studied his face. Under the harsh reputation, under the ruthless decisions, she could see a man calculating every threat and every betrayal. A man who had learned long ago not to show fear even when it pressed against his ribs. She took a breath. This was not a message. This was an attempt to end you. Damon looked up at her. Then why did they fail? Riley held his gaze. Because I was here. There was something in his eyes then, something neither of them expected, not gratitude exactly, but a recognition that this woman, this stranger he had dismissed as unnecessary, had already thrown herself into the line of fire for him. Damon walked toward the window, staring at the skyline, as if it might speak. You do not know what comes with protecting me, he said quietly. You do not know what people want from me. Riley stepped beside him, but kept her eyes on the city. I do not need to know your secrets to keep you alive. He turned to her. And what about the cost? Riley finally looked at him. Your life is not the only one with a cost. Damon froze, surprised, because for the first time someone had implied he was not the center of the risk. Riley moved away, returning to her post without waiting for him to respond. As she turned her back to him, Damon realized something unsettling. The sniper had failed. The danger had not. And the only unpredictable thing in the room was not the threat outside. It was Riley Hart. The hours after the attack stretched long and silent in the penthouse, the kind of silence that made every small sound feel sharper, heavier. Damon tried to focus on his laptop, but his eyes kept drifting to Riley as she moved through the room with the controlled grace of someone who never allowed their guard to drop. She checked window angles, reassessed exit routes, calibrated sensors, and every movement whispered discipline carved from years of danger. Damon finally closed his laptop, unable to pretend that work could distract him. "You have not asked who might want me dead," he said. Riley did not look away from the sensor panel. "If you want to tell me, you will. If you do not, it does not change the job." Damon watched her for a long moment. Most people begged for his attention or his secrets. Riley did not care about either. It unsettled him. "This level of attack is not personal envy," he continued. "It is strategic. Someone wants access to something that only I control." Riley turned her head slightly. "Control makes enemies. Power makes more." Damon gave a humorless half-smile. "Then I have both in excess." Riley did not return the expression. "Power does not matter if you are dead." Damon's smile faded. She was right, and hearing it out loud forced him to confront the fragility beneath his reputation. For the first time, Riley approached without analyzing a threat. She simply stopped in front of him, crossing her arms lightly. "I need a list," she said. "Every hostile negotiation, internal dispute, and personal feud from the last 12 months. Damon raised an eyebrow. "You think you can read my entire corporate war history overnight?" Riley answered without hesitation. "If it keeps you alive, yes." Damon held her eyes, searching for exaggeration, but she was absolutely serious. Something tightened in his chest. Respect, maybe, or the unfamiliar sting of trust. He exhaled and walked to a biometric drawer built into his desk. With a fingerprint press, it opened, revealing a locked tablet. He handed it to her. "This contains everything you asked for. Some of it is classified even within my own boardroom." Riley accepted it with steady hands. "Then it stays between us." Damon studied her profile as she began scrolling through files. She absorbed information with the speed of someone who had survived on awareness. Names, dates, conflicts, acquisitions, threats, all moving across her eyes like ghost trails. After several minutes, she spoke quietly. "One of these people knows your habits, your routes, your hours. That means the leak is internal." Damon stiffened, his voice dropping. "You believe someone inside my company is trying to kill me." Riley did not soften her tone. "Someone close. Someone who understands how to aim for the places you think are safe." Damon turned toward the window, tension rising in his shoulders. "I built this empire so that I would never have to fear anyone again." Riley stepped closer, her voice steady. "Fear does not make you weak. Ignoring it does." He looked at her, a flicker of vulnerability passing through the ruthless facade. Riley held his gaze, unshaken. "I will find who is doing this," she said. "But you need to do something for me." Damon raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" "Follow my instructions without arguing. Your life depends on it now." For the first time that night, Damon Vance did not challenge her. He simply nodded. Morning crept into the penthouse with a pale silver glow, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Riley had not slept. She had spent the entire night hunched over Damon's encrypted files, mapping connections, cross-referencing motives, and tracing the kind of subtle financial movements that only a trained eye would notice. Damon emerged from his private hallway wearing a dark charcoal suit, but there was something different about him. The polished armor was still there, but beneath it was a tightness around his eyes, a heaviness that came from realizing someone he trusted might be orchestrating his death. He glanced at the untouched coffee on the counter. Riley had brewed it hours ago. She did not look up from the tablet when he approached. "Someone funneled money through a shell company last month," she said. "Enough to hire a precision shooter." Damon leaned closer. "Who authorized the transfer?" Riley's jaw tightened. "Someone with executive-level clearance." Damon exhaled sharply, anger simmering beneath the surface. "There are only 6 people with that clearance." Riley handed him the tablet. "Then we focus on all 6. I have already flagged inconsistencies in 2 of them. Damon stared at her, not the screen. You did all this overnight. Riley finally looked up. Time is not on your side. Damon set the tablet down and leaned against the counter, crossing his arms as he studied her. You have not asked for a break. My job is not to rest, she replied. My job is to keep you alive. Damon's gaze softened slightly, a rare shift in a man known for stone edges. And what keeps you alive, Riley? She paused, something unspoken flickering through her. Purpose, she said, and discipline. Damon opened his mouth to ask more, but a sharp buzz from the penthouse security console cut him off. Riley was already across the room, checking the alert. Her eyes narrowed. Motion detected in the private elevator shaft, she said. Damon frowned. No one should have access to that except me. Riley grabbed her weapon, checking the chamber, her voice crisp. Then someone bypassed your biometric lock. She positioned herself by the wall, her shadow blending into the structure. Damon stood behind her, his breath held tight. The elevator hummed. Stopped. The doors did not open. Riley's grip tightened. Her entire body coiled like a spring. Damon whispered, What are they waiting for? Riley's voice was a razor. An ambush point. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a slim, portable signal disruptor. The moment she activated it, a small metallic pop echoed through the shaft. Damon startled. What was that? A remote detonation trigger, Riley said calmly. Someone planted a charge. They were waiting for the doors to open. Damon's face drained. That elevator leads straight into my home. Riley disabled the remaining circuitry. It will not anymore. She turned to him, her voice steady but firm. This is no longer just about killing you. This is about erasing you, Damon. Someone wants you gone from every angle. Damon swallowed hard, the ruthless edge in him cracking. Why are you still here? You could walk away. Riley holstered her weapon and looked him directly in the eyes. Because I do not abandon people under fire. And whether you like it or not, you are under fire. For the first time since she had met him, Damon Vance did not respond with control or arrogance. He simply nodded, as if accepting that Riley Hart was now the only line between him and the darkness closing in. The discovery of the explosive device turned the penthouse into a command center. Riley swept every corner with tactical precision, her eyes tracking vents, hinges, and structural lines while Damon tried to steady the shaking in his hands. He had survived corporate betrayals, lawsuits, hostile takeovers, and crises that would have crushed lesser men, yet nothing had prepared him for the cold clarity of being hunted inside his own home. Riley finished her sweep and returned to him. We need to relocate. This place is compromised. Damon looked around the penthouse, his voice tight. This is my fortress. No one should be able to breach it. Riley shook her head. Fortresses only feel safe until someone proves otherwise. He exhaled, a rough sound that barely hid the fear he still refused to show. Where do we go? Riley checked her watch. A secure location I used before. Off-grid. No digital trail, no corporate connections. If the attacker has your blueprints, we cannot stay in any building you own. Damon hesitated. You have your own safe house. I have contingencies, she said simply. Damon watched her for a moment, studying the calmness that wrapped around her like armor. How many times have you done this? Riley secured the last latch on her jacket. Enough to know that fear makes people freeze, and freezing gets them killed. Damon swallowed, his voice quieter. And what about you? Do you freeze? Riley met his eyes. A move. Something in that answer lodged itself inside him, unsettling and profound. Minutes later they were in the secured garage, the hum of the private elevator replaced by the echo of concrete and fluorescent lights. Riley led him to an unmarked black SUV, its license plates changed, its interior stripped of anything trackable. Damon paused at the passenger door. You have had this here the entire time? Riley gave a small nod. Preparation keeps people alive. As they drove through the early morning streets, Damon watched her hands gripping the steering wheel, steady and sure. The city lights reflected in her eyes, hard and focused. But beneath the steel there was something else, something he could not name yet. Why did you choose this job? He asked suddenly. Riley did not look at him. I did not choose it. I accepted it. That is not an answer, he pressed. Riley's voice stayed even. I needed the money. My brother needed treatment. He served 2 tours. It did not serve him back. Damon absorbed the weight of that. You are carrying all of that alone? Everyone carries something alone, she said. You included. Damon turned his gaze to the window, surprised by the sting that came from hearing his own truths reflected back at him. For the first time, he realized Riley Hart did not just know danger. She knew loss. When they reached the edge of the city, Riley took a sharp turn onto a hidden road surrounded by thick woods. The world around them faded into darkness and pine. Damon's voice was low. Riley, do you trust anyone? She slowed the car as a secluded cabin came into view, its lights dark, but its structure alert, fortified. She stopped the engine and looked at him for the first time in miles. Trust gets people killed, but I protect the ones I stand with. Damon felt something unfamiliar rising in him, something that had nothing to do with fear. And right now, Riley said softly, I am standing with you. The cabin stood silent beneath the canopy of tall pines, its wooden frame blending into the shadows like it had been waiting for them long before they arrived. Riley stepped out first, scanning the perimeter with fluid precision. Her breath formed faint clouds in the cold morning air, and every rustle in the trees made her posture sharpen. Damon exited the SUV a moment later, his eyes tracking her movements. The ruthless CEO who commanded empires now followed a woman who lived by survival, not boardroom strategy. Inside, the cabin felt stripped of anything personal. No pictures, no sentimental objects, only functional items arranged with military precision. Riley moved through the space, quickly checking window braces, the roofline, the fuse box, and the generator. Damon watched her as he stood near the doorway, feeling strangely like a guest in a life he could not comprehend. This place, he murmured, you built it for war. Riley replied without looking up. I built it for survival. Once the cabin was secured, Riley finally allowed herself to rest for a moment, lowering into a chair at the small wooden table. Damon remained standing, leaning slightly against the counter, arms folded, studying her in the dim light. You have lived this life for a long time, he said quietly. Riley did not deny it. Danger comes with the job. You stop noticing after a while. Damon shook his head. I notice it. I have never met anyone who moves the way you do. Riley lifted her gaze. You mean like someone who expects danger? Damon nodded. Exactly. She held his eyes for a breath. Expecting danger keeps you alive. Damon hesitated, then spoke softer. And what keeps you human? Riley looked down at her hands. Some days nothing does. The honesty hung between them, raw and unexpected. Damon walked closer, the boards creaking beneath his feet. Your brother, he said. He is why you took this job. Riley's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Damon exhaled, guilt washing through him. I did not know. You were not supposed to know, she answered. My life is not your burden. Damon's voice lowered. But it is because of me that you are in danger now. Riley shook her head firmly. I stepped into this with open eyes. I knew the risks. Damon moved closer, unable to look away from her now. You could have chosen any assignment. Why did you stay after the first bullet? Riley's voice thinned. Because someone wanted you dead badly enough to cross every line. That means they will not stop. And I do not walk away from things that chase people. Damon felt something inside him shift, like a crack spreading through armor he spent years constructing. You should not have to protect me alone, he said. Alone is how this works, Riley replied. Partnerships slow things down. Damon stepped even closer. Then maybe I want to be the exception. Riley looked at him sharply, her pulse flickering in her throat. The moment stretched, charged with something neither of them could name yet. But before either could speak again, Riley's phone vibrated with a coded alert. She checked the screen, and her expression hardened instantly. The attacker moved, she said. Damon straightened. To where? Riley held the phone tightly. To your company. Someone is accessing your internal files right now. They are getting desperate. Damon froze. That means the traitor is making their move. Riley grabbed her gear, her voice razor sharp. Then we go back into the fire. And this time, we end it. Damon followed her toward the door, but not before letting one truth settle fully inside him. Riley Hart was no longer just his protector. She was becoming the one person he could not afford to lose. The drive back into the city cut through a rising storm, rain hitting the windshield in hard, relentless sheets as Riley gripped the wheel with both hands and pushed the SUV faster down the empty highway. Damon sat beside her, tension coiled through his entire frame, watching the buildings grow closer with every mile. The coded alert still burned in Riley's mind, Someone inside Vance Industries was digging through Damon's confidential files at this very moment, and whoever it was had grown reckless enough to leave digital traces. That meant panic. Panic meant mistakes. Mistakes meant an opening. Whoever is doing this knows we will come back, Damon said. Riley's eyes stayed on the road. And they are hoping you walk into whatever trap they set. Damon turned his head toward her. But I am not walking in alone. Riley did not answer, but there was a flicker in her expression, something sharp and protective. As they approached the city, Riley took a detour through a side street, then another, watching the rearview mirror like it was a threat in itself. Someone followed us before. They might try again, she murmured. Damon watched her assess every shadow and reflection. Does your mind ever stop calculating danger? Riley exhaled through her nose. Not if I want to stay alive. When they reached the underground loading entrance of Vance Industries, Riley killed the engine and scanned the dim concrete corridors. The storm above sent deep thunder rolling through the building, rattling vents and pipes like distant warnings. Riley stepped out first, her footsteps silent as she moved forward with her weapon lowered but ready. Damon followed closely behind, his chest tight with the knowledge that the traitor was somewhere inside. They slipped through service corridors until they reached a stairwell leading up to the executive floors. Riley stopped Damon with a hand on his chest. Stay behind me. If anyone is here, they are expecting you to lead. Damon nodded, but the look in his eyes said he hated it. The climb was tense, every creak of metal and echo of their footsteps amplified by the storm overhead. When Riley reached the top floor, she slowly cracked the stairwell door open. The hallway lights flickered, computers hummed faintly, and a subtle scent of something burned drifted through the air. Damon whispered, "Someone was here." Riley moved ahead, scanning corners, her voice barely audible. "They are close." They reached Damon's private office. The door was slightly ajar. Not enough to seem careless. Enough to be an invitation. Riley lifted her hand, signaling Damon to stay back. Then she nudged the door with her foot. Inside, monitors glowed in the darkness, reflecting off polished surfaces. Files were open on the desk, and standing near Damon's computer with shaking hands was someone neither of them expected. Marcus Hale, Damon's own cousin and second in command. Damon's breath caught. Marcus. Marcus spun around, guilt and desperation twisting through his face. Damon, you were not supposed to come back yet. Riley stepped inside, weapon raised, voice cold. Step away from the computer. Marcus held up his hands. I did not want it to be like this. Damon's voice cracked with betrayal. You hired the sniper. You tried to blow up my home. Marcus's eyes filled with panic. You do not understand. The board was pushing me. Investors wanted you out. They said you were destroying the company. Damon stepped forward, fury shaking him. So you decided to kill me? Marcus's voice broke. They promised I would take your place. They promised everything would stabilize. Riley tightened her stance. You sold a man's life for a promotion. Marcus flinched. I did not think it would go this far. Damon's voice turned lethal. It already did. Marcus looked at Riley, trembling. You will not shoot. You are not a killer. Riley's eyes hardened. But I protect the people I stand with. And right now, that is him. Marcus lunged toward the desk, reaching for a hidden weapon, but Riley moved faster, slamming him to the ground and pinning his arm behind his back. Damon watched, breath shaking, as the truth shattered the last pieces of his trust. Riley cuffed Marcus with swift, practiced movements, then looked up at Damon. It is over, she said softly. But Damon knew it was not over at all, because as he looked at Riley Hart holding his traitor down, he realized something deeper than betrayal had taken root. He was falling for the one woman who stood between him and every threat he faced, the one woman he could not afford to lose now more than ever. When the police arrived to take Marcus Hale into custody, the storm had reached its peak. Thunder cracked over the city like the sky itself wanted to echo the chaos that had just unfolded inside Vance Industries. Officers sealed Damon's office, technicians collected evidence, and the board members were summoned for an emergency meeting to address the attempted assassination. But even as the building buzzed with urgent voices and flashing lights, Damon only focused on one thing: Riley. She stood near the far window, arms crossed, her silhouette framed by rain streaking down the glass. She looked calm, but Damon could see the tension still tightening her shoulders, the adrenaline that refused to fade. He walked toward her slowly. She did not move until he stopped beside her. "It is done," Damon said quietly. Riley's eyes remained on the storm outside. "There will be fallout. Power struggles leave shadows." Damon shook his head. "Marcus will face the law. The board will answer for their involvement. But you are the reason I am still alive." Riley's jaw tightened. "I did my job." Damon stepped closer. "You did more than that." She finally turned to look at him, her expression steady but conflicted. "Damon, do not turn this into something it is not." "I am not," he said. "I know what you did for me. Not just tonight. From the moment you took the first bullet meant for me." Riley exhaled, her breath trembling just slightly. "You were a target. Protecting you was the mission." Damon shook his head slowly, his voice dropping to something more vulnerable than he had allowed in years. "Riley, the mission ended the moment Marcus was arrested. So why are you still here?" Riley blinked, caught off guard by the softness in his tone. She opened her mouth, closed it, then answered quietly, "Because you are not out of danger yet." Damon gave a faint smile. "That is not the only reason." Riley looked away, gripping the windowsill. "Attachment is a liability." "Not always," Damon said. "Sometimes it is the reason you survive." She glanced at him again, and this time Damon did not hide the truth in his eyes. "You became something I did not expect," he said. "You became the one weakness I never saw coming. And I am not ashamed of that." Riley's breath caught in her chest, the words striking deeper than any bullet she had dodged. But before she could reply, an officer knocked on the door and announced that everything was secure and Damon was free to leave. Damon nodded but kept his eyes on her. "Come with me," he said softly. Riley hesitated. "Damon, when the assignment ends, I usually walk away." "Then do something different this time," he replied. Slowly, she lowered her guard, not physically, but in the way she allowed herself to meet his gaze fully. Damon extended his hand, not as a CEO demanding loyalty, but as a man choosing someone he trusted. After a long moment, Riley placed her hand in his. He exhaled with silent relief. Outside, the storm began to break, the rain softening into a calmer rhythm. Together, they stepped out of the office and walked through the silent hallways, side by side, no longer protector and executive, but something new, something fragile and unspoken. In the days that followed, Marcus confessed under pressure from overwhelming evidence. The board was reshaped under legal scrutiny, and Damon publicly addressed the attempted coup, turning the crisis into a declaration of integrity. But the world never learned the full truth, the truth that only two people shared. Damon did not just survive. He was saved. And Riley did not just protect a man. She changed him. One evening, weeks later, they stood together on a quiet rooftop overlooking the city, the wind cool against their faces. Damon took her hand again and said, "You once asked what keeps me human. You do." Riley looked at him with the faintest smile. "And you asked what keeps me alive. Maybe it is this." They stood in silence. No fear, no armor, no shadows chasing them. Just two people who had walked through fire together and found something worth holding on to. And as the lights of the city flickered beneath them, Damon Vance finally understood that sometimes the strongest protection is not steel, strategy, or power. Sometimes it is simply the courage to let someone in.